Okay. How many of you have ever had memories change retroactively? Like, you talk to one of your friends, and like one day you're doing something, and like a few years later you remember back to that something, and you're like, oh, I told you that, or remember when we did this? And they're like, no, we didn't do that. And they might remember it slightly different, and they might remember it radically different. Well, that happened to me one time. I was in my tent, and my friend was outside, and I had another friend in my tent. We were awake talking. And my friend outside that was sleeping in the hammock was dreaming, and he yelled, "Turn, turn, keep me safe, put the fire out." At least that's what I thought he said. Years later down the road, my friend and I that were in the tent were talking, and I remembered that moment and told him that line. And he said, no, it was, "Stop, help, keep me safe, put the fire out." And I said, no. So that was very interesting. So that kind of got me thinking about what reality is. And so for years, I've been thinking about what reality is. Oh, I should probably turn the lights off. Which lights?
Number one.
Number one?
No, I'm lying. I'm wrong again.
Number three?
Sorry. Number three.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm sorry. So I've decided to give my talk today about reality, and by the end of this talk, you should be able to summarize what I believe reality is and give a few examples of what reality can be. It's very interesting. So let's take a trip. So let's take a trip first and start picturing. In order to build reality, we have to talk about dimensions. So I believe there are infinite dimensions, and there are 3 dimensions here, and we are 3-dimensional beings. And we exist in the 4th dimension, which is time. So there's the first dimension, and 2 dimensions, and 3 dimensions. And again, we move about in the 4th dimension, and the dimension that we experience is time. So what is time exactly? That's something else that we should probably discuss. Well, time moves. We move forward in time. But what's interesting is physicists say that there is no law that time can't move backwards. If we were to take all of time and go outside into the 5th dimension and be a being in the 5th dimension and exist outside of time, we could theoretically see everything from the beginning to the end at once. And I don't know if we would know, but we could at least see it. So as I move right now, what time looks like is a snapshot of me moving, and that's what this illustrates. So that's very interesting. Now I want to talk about dimensions in time. So let's imagine that there's an x and a y axis on this grid. And in this grid, the y-axis represents higher and lower dimensions. Time being one in this dimension. Let's just say time is right there. And let's say that there are different dimensions within that time. So we're in time, which is the 4th dimension up. I guess we can go to 4 here. And there are different dimensions in that time. So there are different timelines. This is kind of ideas that have been talked about in movies like The Matrix, but they do have real physics proofs. You can prove that there are different dimensions with math. People are just trying to figure out how we can actually prove these things. And I think that we have different illustrations of things that we can kind of think. We can say, okay, maybe there are different dimensions. So now I want to illustrate now an infinite cube, okay? An infinite cube. And this infinite cube can be cut up in time slices. And if we draw like a certain line down this cube, gosh, I hope I'm explaining this okay. If we draw a certain line down this cube on our timeline, that's an illustration of what we experience in this dimension. Okay. So what the Mandela effect is something that we experience all around us. It's the idea that we misremember certain things. And I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys a few questions. When Darth Vader says, "I am your father," what does he say beforehand? Does anybody know? Is it Luke? No. It's actually no, interestingly enough. In Forrest Gump, when he's sitting on the bench and he says to the girl,
"Life is like a box of chocolates."
Life is like a box of chocolates, right? Well, now, interestingly enough, its life was like a box of chocolates, which is very strange. There's another example that's really interesting. In the movie Field of Dreams, it's a very famous movie, I don't know if you've all seen it, there's a certain line where this guy's walking in a cornfield, and somebody whispers, if they build it, they will, if you build it, they will come, which makes sense because it's talking about the movie, and if you build a baseball field, the players will come or something. But now it says, if you build it, he will come, which makes no logical sense with the movie. Very interesting. And also, Randy Jackson never said, ever, yeah, what did he say? He never said, yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog. He never said that. You can't ever find a clip like that. Also, in World War I and World War II, we painted our boats with abstract colors. Did we ever learn that in history class? No. Now I want to talk about something else. The Statue of Liberty and the Black Tom explosion. The Black Tom explosion was the first major terrorist attack in the US. It happened, and it was the reason that we entered World War II. And I just learned about this last week. I was very dazzled and afraid. What this was the Germans blew up an arsenal of artillery in New York. And the explosion caused a Richter 5 earthquake and shattered all the glass within a 25-mile radius. The effects could be felt in Philadelphia. How many of you know people that have said they have gone up into the torch of the Statue of Liberty? I don't know. I'm sure that maybe some of you have, but I know people that have said that. But apparently, because of this shrapnel explosion, the torch has been closed since 1921. So you haven't been able to go up there since 1921, which is very interesting. And there are lots of other Mandela effects. I would recommend looking up some. Magic mirror on the wall is what is said now instead of mirror on the wall, which is really creepy and eerie. Now I want to talk about one more thing in reality. Let's talk about the man from Tard for a second. Now, in 1953, there was a guy who went to Japan, and he claimed that he was from a country that existed in between Greece and Italy on an island. And what was strange about this man is that he had passport and paperwork, and he claimed that he went to Japan regularly, and there had been stamps, Japanese stamps in his passport. So the Japanese officials were pretty weirded out by this guy, but they didn't want to do anything different, so they arrested him and put him in a hotel room and left him there for the night. But they guarded the door. The police guarded the hotel room, and they made sure that he stayed in there. The man vanished completely with all of his things. And so what people think is that, people think that the reason for the Mandela effect is that somehow timelines are combining or merging and creating different realities than the ones that we remember. And I hope that you learned something today about reality. Thank you.